So we're on page number 8, and in the second paragraph, where I think that's the causal relation in inner dependent arising having seen. So the next paragraph 4. How is the conditional relation in inner dependent arising in sin? So in explaining that here, due to coming together of 6 elements, and then those 6 elements as cooperating, supporting the cause to produce the result. And as due to the coming together, what 6 elements? What are those 6 elements? The same as the previous 6 elements or not?
Yeah.
So here, namely, conditional relation in inner dependent arising is to be seen as due to coming together of element of earth, water, fire, wind, space. The 5 are same. The 6th one is different. Previous one has seated time. This one has consciousness. Okay. So here, it is talking about the cause and conditions for the samsaric birth. Here, what is the earth element in inner dependent arising? So here, particularly about that. That which assembly the form that follows it of the body is called earth elements. So when we talk about the samsaric being, or the being that is taking a birth in samsara, being, then we talk about being as the collection of the 5 aggregates. And when you talk about the collection of 5 aggregates, then if you kind of content, and then it's aggregate of the physical form and the consciousness, the mental aggregates. So then in relation to the physical form, the aggregate, so those physical form aggregates are then depending on those 5 elements. I think that's what it's talking about. Yeah. So the earth elements in the zoology of bodies as our bones, and so forth, that keep it solid and not falling. That which, and then functioning of the water elements is that which provide cohesion in the body is called water elements, as well as all the, liquids in our bodies, blood, liver, urine, all others. So they are part of the water elements. And that which digests whatever the body eats, drinks, chews, and tastes is called fire element. It's the fire elements in the heat in our body that have to digest the heat energy, the heat elements. The wind element, the functional that which perform the functional bodies inhaling and exhaling. Inhalation or exhalation is called the wind element. So for the movements of the wind within our bodies, that allow our blood to flow, and so then our brain and everything's heart and everything to function and so forth. And then that which allow the body to have all those spaces inside is called space elements. Without the space elements, then we wouldn't have all different organs come in existence, and then having that these sort of functions because of the space elements. So then it allow whatever different part of our bodies, to come in existence, and they have their own functionings for the running of this the machine of our bodies. It's our body, so it is. And that which produce sprout of name and form, like reeds in a sheaf. What is that one?
Sheaf is like a posy or a bouquet. A sheaf is like a collection of wheat or
like a
stems.
haystack, yeah,
Stems.
tied together, like hay, wheat tied together.
Okay. And the reeds?
Reeds are like often in the water. They're like a tall
Grass.
Oh, I think okay. I think I know what that
Yeah.
grass looks like.
Yeah.
That would produce a sprout of name and form, like a reeds in the sheep, is a combination of 5 collection of consciousness together with the defined mental consciousness is called the conscious elements. So and all the 5 sense consciousness and the mental consciousness. So that's what like the 6 consciousness. And of course with the mental consciousness, then there are many different primary minds, mental factors, and within the mental factors, the feeling, discriminating mind, compositional factors, they all come within the mental consciousness, So the other 3 aggregates, the aggregate of feeling, the aggregate of discriminating mind, the aggregate of compositional factors, mind. I think they here come within the within this mental consciousness, fits within that, and I guess here together with defined mental consciousness instead of mental consciousness, it's called defined mental consciousness. I think because because we are talking about samsaric beings, consciousness of samsaric beings, but we are not talking about enlightened beings and the aggregate of enlightened beings. We're talking about that here at the moment. Oh. Okay. Exactly where we go. Later or defined, yeah. Okay. Development of consciousness called conscious elements. Without those conditions, the body cannot be born, This our physical form aggregates the body is dependent on those 5 aggregates. And to function as a, the body of alive beings, then of course also it also depends on consciousness. Otherwise, it would be just a corpse, And so therefore, to the body of living beings as a living beings, then it depends on all the 6 conditions that has been described here. And so therefore, again, they are dependent arisings because they depend on that. But when the inner earth element is not deficient, and likewise the elements of water, fire, wind, space, and consciousness are not deficient, then because of all factors coming together, the body forms. The body forms. So the consciousness is not a direct primary cause of the body, but it can be supportive conditions. And in the same way, the primary cause of body is not the mind, it is something physical, because the body is something physical matter. So primary principal cause of the body is something physical, which is our fathers and mothers, sperm and eggs, starting from there, and others. But also the mind can be a supportive, cooperative conditions. Okay, act as a supportive conditions. That is the way that there is something wrong with our bodies or part of the body, how it can affect our state of mind, and vice versa, because there is that relationship, even though they are not primary cause of each other, but they can be conditional supportive conditions and support to each other. Therefore, in this process, the earth element does not think. I provide a solidity for the body by assembling, all the part of the earth element, by assembling all the atoms, sub-atoms of the bodies, nor does the water element thinks. I provide cohesion for the body. Nor the fire element thing, I digest whatever the body eats, drink, chew, or taste. Nor does the wind element think that I perform the function of bodies, inhalations and exhalations. Nor does the space element think I create hollow space inside the body. Nor does the element of consciousness think I produce the name and form of the bodies. Nor does the body think I am produced by those conditions, and when those conditions are present, the body is formed. Just like previously, when the right cause and conditions come together, the result is produced, even though, each of those cause doesn't think, each of cause and condition doesn't think I'm producing that result. But when the cause and conditions come together, the result is produced. And that is because they are dependent arisings, and they have that some particular law of cause and effect or dependent arisings. In the same way, the result doesn't think I've been produced by that cause and conditions, but when there's certain particular cause and condition are together, then the result is being produced. I think it's in Dharma, one of the Indian scholars, masters, philosophers. Dharma in his Samana Vatika, he explained, you know, with all the cause and condition come together, you know, then nothing can stop. Even you wish them the result not to come, the result will come. You know, I plant the seed, I give the water, and there is a heat, light, everything that need for that seed to grow. And even I pray and wish and I think, may it never grow, it will grow. Because all the right cause and condition have come together for it to grow. If all the right and cause and condition have not come together, you can pray, you can wish, you can think, may this plant grow, but you don't give water, you don't have good soil, you don't have good seed, or all other conditions, other rest of conditions, if you don't create all this right cause and condition, and you can think, you can wish, you can hope, you can expect, you can pray, whatever you do, it doesn't just manifest like that way. It doesn't fall, it doesn't, how things comes about doesn't follow what you wish or what you don't wish. You know, it depends on whether all the right cause and condition have come together or not. And also, Nagarjuna said in God's supposed way of life, same thing, you know. If everything follows the way you wish, nobody will suffer. You know, if everything just follows what you wish, with your prayer, with your inspiration, nobody will suffer because nobody wish suffering. Nobody want and inspired for a suffering. Nobody pray for a suffering. You know. But it doesn't follow that. It follows depending on arising cause and condition. It's about creating the cause and condition. It's all about whether all the cause and conditions have been created or not, whether all the cause and conditions have come together or not. And so it's here similar. You know, even if they don't have that wish, they don't think I'm producing this and this and that, but it is being produced because the right cause and condition come together. And again, it is important, you know, creating the right cause conditions through such understanding. Sometimes we might not create the right cause and condition, and we just can pray all kinds of prayer, and then nothing happens. And then we think, oh, you know, prayers and all of that is only one small part of the conditions. You know, it's not a whole conditions. Just like here, we talk about multiple cause and conditions. And this is also just example, giving those 6 conditions. it doesn't mean it's only 6 conditions are there. These are the kind of primary conditions, both in terms of external dependent arising or internal dependent arising. They are much more than that. You know.
When the teachers say that we should set a very strong intention before we undertake an activity, for example, that's the difference between doing something that is Dharma and not Dharma. But it's not a primary condition.
Is the primary condition to be a Dharma or not Dharma, or to be a true Dharma, not true Dharma. Condition be whether it's a cause of liberation or not liberation, whether it's a cause of fully enlightenment or not enlightenment, even with the same actions. So it's a part of that condition, important part of condition. But it's just having intention not enough. Intention is important and play a big role, especially in path.
Yeah.
In training our mind. As Patisha mentioned, and based on that, and also in other Lamrim and Lotions, they explain in Adishas, there are 2 things. 2 important things to be done at the beginning and end. And so that is at the very beginning, the right intention motivation, the bodhicitta intention motivation for a mind practice. At the end, the dedication. Those 2 are very important part of the practice. It's not only the practice. There's actual body of the practice, and then there's beginning of the practice. There's end of the practice. So all these are part of that, many cause conditions for our spiritual realizations, practices. The actual practice can be whatever form of meditation, whatever form of practice it might be, but also part of that, another important part of that practice condition is those motivations, the intentions is important. But just intentions is not enough. That is what it is. It doesn't follow just by the intention. And also that is why also when you talk about aspiring bodhicitta, engaging bodhicitta, aspiring bodhicitta is the wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, induced by true love and compassion. But then it's wonderful to have that kind of aspiring bodhicitta. It's such a wonderful, powerful state of mind. It's unbelievable, kind of incredibly powerful, highest level of altruistic intentions, motivations, state of mind. But then, as it said, if you want to achieve enlightenment, it's not enough. Just having the wish to do that. You have to engage in the practice of Siddhaparamita, to actually create those cause and conditions. And so the example in case of that given in it's called the scripture is like the wish to go to the city is the aspiring bodhicitta. The intention to go to the city to do something because you need to do some grocery or something. You are running out of your grocery. So of course you need the intention. Important. Otherwise you wouldn't move. You become lazy and you just stay. And then you run out of it and you don't have enough to eat. So you have the intention, I need to go to the grocery and to get something. But that is not enough. You can have that intention and not go there.
Mm.
You know. So in order to fulfill your needs, which is to get the grocery so you can cook and feed yourself, then after that intention, you need to walk, drive, whatever form of transportation you take to go there and buy it, isn't it?
Mm.
So same thing, that is why the intention is very important, but it's not enough. And that is also one of the His Holiness Dalai Lama's advice all the time. You know, we need to pray, have good intentions, prayers, intentions, meditations. All of that help to change, to change the world, to see the better world. But it is not enough. You have to act. You know. That's only one part of the conditions. It's not the whole part. It's among the so many multiple cause and conditions you need. That is only one part. Important part, but that is not only the part. And so therefore, I think those are important. To understand the importance of those intentions. At the same time, the intention, the prayers, and all of those, it doesn't, only just by that self, it doesn't, we cannot get the result. What we have to create many other cause and conditions that is needed. You know, it's just like, you know, on the seed, you just put the water, and then if you don't have other conditions, then it is not going to produce the result that you are looking for. So I was kind of, yeah. So in relation to that intention, yeah, you know, you find especially in Lamrim and Lojong that so the importance of having the right intentions is key. You know, even though we might be doing internal virtues or actions, same action, the practice of generosity, let's say, you know, you practice generosity. Depending on what intention you have, what kind of intention you have, how strong that the practice of generosity become, it depends on your motivations, whether that practice of generosity becomes just a cause of a, you know, better condition in samsara, you know, or whether it become cause of freedom from samsara, nirvana, for your own individual liberation, or it become cause of fully enlightened state, you know, the ultimate state of the highest state for the benefit of all sinners. Whether it becomes, it depends on the intentions, even though actions is in terms of the action is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely that is, but yeah, the intent just not. So here is, yeah, even you don't have all in terms of here, coming together of those aggregates, you know, when those cause conditions come together, then such aggregate is formed, and through such forming aggregation and being as samsaric being, it being produced or being birthed or taking a birth. And yeah, I was trying to, I wanted to kind of emphasize a little bit of, because in this Sutta says, and also in Shantideva and many others teachings, they talk about understanding the important multiple cause and conditions. for everything. A lot of time because we tend when things are not working in our individual, whether it's in our individual situation or whether it is as a collective situations, collectively as a family, collectively as a Sangha members of particular organizations, or as a collectively as the state, the country that you live in, the world that we live in, sometimes when things go wrong, we tend to point finger to one cause. Not understanding is much more complex than that. Sometimes the finger you are pointing, might be only one of the conditions, one of the cause and conditions. There are other multiple cause and conditions that lead to that situation, that lead to that instant. And it's important to be aware of that. When we are not aware, then we seem to just point to someone or someone's action or just something for things going wrong when there are so many other causes and conditions. And even when we try to fix, instead of trying to fix it holistically by fixing everything, we just try to fix one thing, and then that never fixes the problem. It's only temporary. Because that is not the full, it is not the whole cause condition, that is only one of them. It's like a machine that is kind of breaking down everywhere, and you fix one, and that runs a little bit, and then again, other one break down after some days. And you fix that, another day, it break down. So it's like, because all of them were starting to break, all of them is not just one thing. Similarly, that is cause and conditions, the multiple cause and conditions, the importance of understanding of involvement of multiple cause and conditions. And that's where also here, talking about both the cause and conditions, not only the cause and condition, multiple conditions, both internal, external dependent arising. And so since the so-called being, the persons of the being of the sense of the samsara, is merely, is merely imputed on the coming together of those aggregates. It's just dependent arising, coming together those aggregates, which themselves are dependent arising, dependent on many other causes and conditions, and which themselves are also dependent on many other causes and conditions endlessly, in same. So it is only dependent arising, the so-called the person, the I, the being, the self, whatever you call it, is merely imputed on coming together of those aggregates. There's nothing more than that. There's no independent or inherently existing self or I or person or me, is dependent arising, the aggregate as well as the mind, the thought that impute on the basis of coming together. Okay, there's nothing more than that. So therefore, here, the earth element is not a self. Okay. And it's similar to Nagarjuna's so Nagarjuna that probably come from here too, based on those sutras and other sutras. In Precious Garlands, Nagarjuna says, the person is not the earth elements, no water element, no fire element, no space elements, not the space element, nor the consciousness element, nor the collection of just merely the collection of those elements. Therefore, the person is empty of ultimately existence. The person cannot exist ultimately or inherently by itself without depending on others, other causes and conditions, such as the aggregates. Similar analysis or meditation you find in Shantideva. That's both over life. And he go even more details, the person is not the blood, the person is not the urine, the person is not the bone, the person is not each of those different parts of your body, not the person is your feeling, not the person is your discriminating mind, not the person is your compositional factor mind, not your person is conscious. Yeah. Are we clear? Yeah. So similar here, that is why it is saying, here. The earth element is not the self or the person's, not a being, not a life force, A life force is that one that's sustain a being, that make that person alive, keep alive. As we mentioned yesterday, exactly what, as I said, breath was in some, it says breath, and because I think that is one thing, if you stop breathing, then you are dead, But anyway, the life force is something, the energy that keeps someone alive, and so even though it's dependent, the person's or the self is dependent on life force, but it's not the life force itself. Are we clear? It is dependent, even though it is dependent on life force, it's not a creature. The earth element is not a creature, life force. The earth element is not a human being. Not a person, not a female, not a man, not a neuter, not me, not mine, and not anyone else. I don't know whether you try. So the so-called self is merely imputed on the basis of certain cause and condition coming together, such as the five aggregate. There's nothing independent. In same way, the so-called self or so-called the being is also merely imputed on the basis of coming together of many causes and conditions. The so-called life force is same, there's no inherent existing life force or independent life force. The life force is merely imputed on the basis of many causes and conditions that come together to keep the life alive. So-called a creature, is also not inherently existing or independently existing. It's only dependent arising. But depending on many causes and conditions, is merely imputed. So-called human is same for persons is same for male, female, neutral. So-called me or I is same, the so-called mind, such as my eyes, my body, my feelings, and so on. Again, there's no inherent existence in any of them, or truly, or existing on its own side. They are merely imputed on the basis of many causes and conditions coming together. In other words, they all are merely imputed on the coming together of certain causes and conditions. Yes.
That's confused. The consciousness element also is not life force, but then we just say that the life force or the consciousness changes from the rebirth from life to life.
The consciousness, not life force. Yeah, the life force is not just the consciousness. There are many other causes and conditions. Consciousness can help someone to be, alive. But as I mentioned, breath. Life force is, as I mentioned yesterday in some teaching there, they call the life force as a breath, not a wind, and it's something that keep alive, and even that breath is dependent on many causes and conditions. Even the consciousness dependent more. So there is no. So each of them by itself is not each of them. But when many cause conditions, the consciousness, the breath, and many other cause and conditions come together, that keep alive, being alive. And then we call that a life force. The so-called life force is merely imputed by depending on cause condition. So therefore, there's not one inherently existing cause that can be known as life force. So, yeah, I was talking, all of them, the so-called me, you, mine, yours, creatures, not creatures, self, others, being, not beings, we are being, this is not beings, all of this concept, all of these objects, life force, not life force, this has life force, this has no life force, all of that, human, not human beings, male, females, or neutral, neither male, female, or both, whatever, all those different levels we identify with different objects, different beings and different objects, there's nothing that exists as it is from its own side inherently, everything is dependent arising by depending on many causes and conditions coming together. On the basis of all many causes and conditions coming together, then is merely imputed. Merely imputed. This doesn't come as a human thing by itself. It's just a coming together assembly of the aggregates. This didn't come as a non-human beings by itself. Do you get it? Due to certain cause and conditions, there are certain objects that function certain way, and then this is imputed as stable non-human beings. This is imputed as a human beings, and then male and females, and all of others. So all of them are merely imputed by coming together of parts that make that object and of certain functions, nothing more than that. So I think that is, yes,
Would it be correct to say that consciousness and what you were saying, wind, that there's life force?
but not even necessarily just those two. Maybe I think there are many other conditions that come together to function as to keep a being alive, instead of not being alive, the consciousness and the breath and some other conditions are needed for someone to still be able to be alive and continue to live. And that is what we call life force. On the basis of that coming together, and it has certain functioning, the certain functioning of keeping the being alive. On the basis of that, then it merely imputed. Then we say that is life force. But there is nothing so-called life force by itself, independently. So there is certain cause and condition coming together. Certain cause and condition coming together. It has certain functioning. Okay. In these cases, the functioning of keeping a being alive. And then our mind impute a level, or that is life force. Nothing more than that. So life force is also merely imputed on the basis of coming up together some many cause and conditions which have certain functionings. And in these cases, the functioning of keeping a being alive. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Similarly, water elements, the fire element, the wind element, the space element, the conscious element are not the self, not being, not life force, not creature, no human, not a person, not a female, not a female, not a man, not a neutral, not me, not mine, and not anyone else. So each of the aggregates or each of the parts of that object, whatever object it is, here we are talking about the being. So, in a beings, each part of aggregates is not the beings. Not only each of the part is not the being, also each conditions or part of each of those aggregates are also not being. And the part of each of those conditions are not the person, not the being. Nor merely collections of those aggregates are being. So the so-called the being with coming together of all these conditions that produce those aggregates. And by coming together of those aggregates, collection of those aggregates has certain functionings of functioning of a being. On the basis of that, basis of those all cause condition coming together and has certain functioning on the basis of that, then it's that. And on the basis of that, then is imputed or labeled as a being. That's it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's leave on that at the moment.
But there are two, so it's just like, there are two bases. One is the collection and the other is the function. And on the basis of those two things, we impute.
Yeah, and on the basis of that is imputed, but also at the same time, you know, for something to exist relatively or personally, it needs to have certain criteria. I cannot just go and impute everything what I like. Otherwise, there will be chaos there. You impute this as, you know, I imputed this. Whoever imputed this as an iPad, someone said I'm going to impute an elephant. Someone said I'm going to impute a glass. Someone said I'm going to impute as a flower. Then there will be chaos there. Yeah. Someone said, "Can you bring me an elephant?" And then or iPad. Then someone might bring something else. Someone can. So you know, it's not like, even though everything is imputed by mind, you know, if I start imputing this elephant, then this does not exist as an elephant in conventional level, on relative level. Not only ultimate level, but even on conventional level, it cannot exist. You know, so therefore, maybe we can talk a little bit later, but just because everything is merely imputed doesn't mean that we can impute anything that you like. And by imputing everything you like, that it becomes existence.
Except the cunt.
You know, not everything we impute exists. Okay. Not everything our mind impute exists even on conventional level. You know, the hidden existing self is imputed by our mind, but it does not exist. The object of our ignorance is imputed by our mind. And there are a lot of things our mind impute, so many things, but many of them do not exist at all on conventional level. So not everything that we impute by our mind exists. And to be able to, even though everything is merely imputed. Okay. So you know, you've seen the Sutra. Explaining dependent arisings, depending on cause conditions in terms of external object phenomena as well as internal objects phenomena. I think that doesn't seem too difficult, especially in relation to the external phenomena. Because that is something we observe quite regularly, and we see that quite regularly. While they explain the dependent arising, but through explanation of dependent arising is also explaining the emptiness. With the reasoning of dependent arising is explaining how things do not exist by itself or by its own power, because nothing can exist by its own power or by itself without depending on all these different cause conditions, other factors, so forth. And I think when it comes to that explanation of the emptiness part, that's where it will start a little bit. You know, that's where all this, where you talk about each of those elements are not the self being so and so on, all of that, that is where trying to explain how even though our mind or ignorant mind perceive the self or the being or the person to exist inherently from its own side, but how that is mistaken, because that's not how the self exists. The way actually self exists or the being exists is by depending on so many other cause and conditions. And so through that understanding, then, if we try to understand the both truth, ultimate truth and relative truth of the being, of the self, and all other phenomena. And when we are able to see both ultimate and relative truth within the object, then we find a middle way without falling in one of the extremes.
Isn't it in the break we were just talking about the Hindu understanding of the self and the Atman with the desire to reach nirvana, so peace, and wondering if Geshela could explain whether in the Hindu teachings there's any teachings about relative and ultimate truth or dependent arising, or whether they just believe in the Atman aiming to reach nirvana. And that's it.
Maybe they might not use relative and ultimate truth and true reality, but there is some similarity, for long times. Basically, it's trying to see whether everything that appears to our mind, is that how everything exists, the way our mind, it appears to our mind, or is there something more than what appears to our mind? That is also their goal of trying to find out, that is the appearance deceptive or not, everything that appears, is it true the way it appears, or is there something else? Then that's just the appearance. So that's is also they have also that kind of journey with that. And again, so maybe in many of cases they might not use the term relative conventional truth or truth, and also liberation, even though we might use same word nirvana or liberation, it could mean different. Just as we use the same word God, it doesn't mean same. The way we use God in Buddhism and the way they use in many other religions is a bit different, So again, and there's so many things like that. Sin, for example, that word might be used for so many different religions, but there could be very different meaning to it. What sin is, and that could be that same thing helping. We might be using the same term, hell and helping, but if you go deeper, then there's huge difference, of what it means. In some is a permanent, in some is just a moment, of that is not permanent, it's temporary, a moment. And also So, that like that, so sometimes we might be using same term, but it could mean different meanings. And so, yeah. Also, they explain in some of the Hindu teachers and of the scriptures, they talk about selflessness. And also in Buddhism, we talk about emptiness or selflessness, but it's very different meanings, In some other relation, when they talk about selfless, they are talking, they talk about surrendering yourself to the God. There's no sense of, independent self in the sense that separate from the God. You are part of the God. You surrender yourself to God instead of saying, like this kind of me, So again, that is very different from our understanding or concept of selflessness, So again, I think there are many such things in everything. We might be using same term, but there's huge different meanings in that. Yeah. Mm. So, I don't know, before the break, I kind of touch on something, which sometimes it may more complications, more confusion, then, so sometimes it's, so before the break, I was talking about, because we talk about merely imputed and how everything is merely imputed on the basis of coming together a certain part of each of those objects, and of certain functioning of that. And so on the basis of that, that's how everything is merely imputed. And also talk about how even though everything is merely imputed, that doesn't mean we can impute everything that we like, and that is not how things functions and how things exist. And for something to exist relatively conventionally, then there are three kind of criteria, that need to fill, One is the objects is kind of commonly known and accepted in the conventional world, and it has that functioning. What is commonly known and accepted in conventional world, and this will be the iPad that is conventionally in our world. In conventional world, that is this is what it is kind of accepted as an iPad, known as an iPad in that conventional world, and it on the basis of certain functions, The iPad has its own function coming together of many causes and conditions. And on the basis of all this putting together and with that functionings, someone invented that. And then on the basis of that, then someone imputed as the iPad. And that is what is kind of known and accepted in a world. Yeah. Okay. And so the other things, it shouldn't be contradicted by valid cognizers that receive conventional reality. And also it shouldn't be contradicted by a valid cognizer that precedes ultimate reality. Okay. So if I label one is conventionally is not an elephant, even I might want to impute it. My mind imputes elephant, but it doesn't become conventionally existing as a elephant. One, it doesn't have functioning of that elephant. It doesn't, it's not kind of conventional world is known as not known as an elephant and is not accepted elephant, and it doesn't have that functioning. You know. Secondly, in conventional, the valid cognizers that receive this as a iPad, okay, there is a valid cognizers, okay, that receive this conventional objects, the iPad as an iPad. It's a valid cognizer, it's not mistaken mind, it come of that relationship. And if I impute this as an elephant, that valid cognizer will contradict this my mistaken mind that impute and perceive as an elephant. Are we clear? Yeah. So therefore, again, it contradicts by the valid cognizer that perceives a conventional reality of iPad as an iPad for someone to perceive is an elephant and label as an elephant. So therefore, it cannot exist as an elephant conventionally because that has been contradicted by that valid cognizers of valid cognizers that perceive conventional reality of iPad as an app. And also, it shouldn't be contradicted by the valid cognizer that perceive, ultimate reality. And in that cases, if my mind impute this as inherently existing iPad, and my mind perceive this as inherently existing, and that inherently existing iPad do not exist on conventional level because that has been contradicted by that the valid cognizer that perceive this iPad as non-inherently existing. Are we clear? There's a valid cognizer, okay? Before it is a valid cognizer that perceive this as iPad, which is a relative phenomenon. Now there's another kind of valid cognizer that perceive ultimate truth or ultimate reality of this iPad. That is iPad is empty of inherent. Is everyone connecting? Ringing a bell? Not sleepy? Confused? Okay, so so my mind that impute this as inherently existing iPad. Okay. So that is my ignorance will impute that. And my ignorance will perceive this to be inherently existing iPad. That inherently existing iPad do not exist, not only on the ultimate level, even on conventional level. Even on relative level, there is no inherently existing iPad, even on conventional level, because that has been contradicted by that valid cognizer that perceives the ultimate reality of this iPad. So therefore, it need to be not being in order for something to exist conventional level or relative level. One, it should be known and accepted in conventional world, and that it has that particular functioning. And then secondly, it shouldn't be contradicted by the cognizer that perceive that object as particular conventionally objects, and then also that shouldn't be contradicted by the cognizer that perceive ultimate reality or nature. So I think with that, then again, because sometimes when we say things are merely imputed, and if it's merely imputed, then I can impute anything, we can impute anything. If there is some kind of misunderstanding of that. And then it seems like then if that is the case, then there's nothing really to hold on, there will be chaos in this conventional world that we live in. We will not be able to communicate. If everyone started to impute whatever they want to each object. And so therefore, I think it's the Savakiti, he said, the confess. The imputation, the term in all the words, the concept, whatever, all of them functions. Is a helpful in terms of better communications in our conventional world with each other. Without that, then we will not be able to communicate well. So anyway, so that is where we are. So now I think it comes back to the 12 link, more details with each of those 12 links. So in terms of 12 link, when we talk about the dependent arising in relation to the inner dependent arisings, and then how ignorance produce karmic formation, and how karmic formation produce the consciousness and so forth until the samsaric birth, aging, and death, and so then now what is that ignorance? What is the karmic formations? Each of them now it's going to go more detail in that. Here, what is the ignorance? That which precede the same 6 elements to be unitary. Unity is what? Partless? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can people partless. Even though there's nothing that exists partless. Whether it's physical matters or whether it's non-physical matters, consciousness, all has part. There's nothing that's partless. So perceiving that as a partless unity is ignored, mistaken. Hope. even though, each of those parts are not the whole, but perceiving that each of parts to be whole is again ignorance, mistaken. Such as the fire element to be the persons, is only just part, is not the whole. Or earth element to be a person, when it's only part, which is not the whole. Or consciousness element to be the person when it's only part and not the whole. Receiving those, each of those part of the wholeness to perceive as a whole is a mistake. The ignorance. Even though each of those 6 elements are impermanent, it will change. The earth element changing all the time. The water element changing all the time. All other elements, including the consciousness element, even though they are always changing. Transitory, impermanent, but to perceive it as permanent, unchanging, is mistaken. It's wrong. Wrongly or constant, the constant in Tibetan Dhamma means kind of being very stable. Constant means stable, yeah. So even though all these 6 elements, such as, this is just only one example, such as 6 elements, which are the basis of the persons to be imputed as a person. Even though each of those are transitory, but to perceive it as constant, not a transitory, that is again mistaken, wrong, and that's why it's ignored. Status, remaining same all the time, pleasurable. Even though, there are contaminated because they are result of karma and delusion. Those our feelings, our aggregates. Our aggregates are also result of our karma and the delusions. And therefore there are and something contaminated cannot be real happiness or pleasure. And so that, as Buddha mentioned in terms of 4 seals, all contaminated experience are suffering. They are suffering, not a true happiness, but to perceive as a happiness or pleasure is mistaken, wrong. Except, and we talked before, again, similarly, those elements are not the self. They are just the basis of the self. Basis for which self is imputed, but they themselves are not the self itself. They themselves, each of those elements, as well as the collection of those elements, as well as the continuity of those elements itself, is not the self, is not the being. And so to perceive being it as a being self, as a being, is mistaken. And being life force, that previously, each of again those elements, is not the life force, creature, a soul, a man, and individuals, a human. So, similar like previous one, man, woman, or neutral, both, neither, or individuals, a human as a human beings. Well, as person, as a me, mind, along with many others, such as variations or misapprehensions, is called ignorance. Because the mind that perceives those 6 elements to be all of them is mistaken, wrong, and ignorance, because that's not what they are. Those 6 elements are not each of them. So the mind that perceives to it, be that all of that, is then the mistaken, wrong, and therefore ignorance. The presence of such ignorance brings desire, aversion, and delusion towards objects. So here the Buddha explaining how ignorance is the root of all other delusions. That we often hear, and we often see in different teachings, texts, how all the delusions are rooted in 3 poisons. That's why they're called 3 poisons, which is the ignorance, aversion, or anger and attachments. And that desire or attachment and aversion and anger is also very rooted into the ignorance. So that is here very clearly is made here. The presence of such ignorance brings desires and aversions, and due to such desires and aversions, then many other delusions towards objects arising. Because of the desire or attachments, then we have jealousy. Then we have greediness. Then we have miserliness. All those different other forms of delusion arise from there. And through that, then many others disturbing emotions or arises. Fear, worry, anxiety, so before we talk about it. Through aversions, then because of the aversions, then anger, hatred, resentments, evil feelings, all those many different, again, other afflictive emotion arises. So all these afflictive emotions is arising or very much rooted in that ignorance. And again, it's important to understand that with our own experience, not because Buddha said here, not because Nagarjuna said, not because Shantideva Chandrakirti said, not because Shifon Dalai Lama said, Lama Tsongkhapa said, or my teacher says, but because you yourself have meditated, you yourself have analyzed it, you yourself have observed those different feelings, and that you are able to see how they are, all these aversions and desire or attachments, how it is coming from your own ignorance, how it is rooted in ignorance. That's very important. Once you have that understanding, through your own observation, through your own practice, meditation, observation, then the teachings become real and strong and profound. and then you kind of really, connect. Instead of all this text said this teacher said this, but I'm not sure. There's a kind of gap. And so to suit that, then you have to, do some practice meditation when you have anger, when we have any emotion arise, whether it's anger, whether it's, resentment, whether it's, hatred, or whether it's, attachment or desire, so forth. See, how does it arise? Why does it arise? Is it rooted in the ignorance or not? If it's rooted in ignorance, how does ignorance comes and appear, and how does that lead? So it's important. And so as Narayana in his fundamental treatise, or the root of the wisdom, different translation, Sherab, and as it said, it says, the liberations is cessations of the karma and the delusions. So basically what he is saying is like explaining the goal that we want to achieve, liberation, whether it's a liberation for yourself or liberation for all sentient beings. There's two kind of practitioners, some who inspire to achieve total freedom from the samsara for themselves, or there are others like bodhisattvas who inspire for liberation, to liberate all sentient beings, not only themselves, to free all sentient beings, including oneself, from the samsara. And so to identify what that nirvana or liberation is that you are trying to achieve. And so in that, the Narayana is explaining liberation is not some kind of some places outside, not something external that there is some places or external that you will. When your mind is free from the delusion and karma, that is liberation. Liberation is within, inside, not something outside, external. So basically, so both samsara and liberation both are within. Also, sometimes we make a mistake, Oh, I don't want to be in samsara. I want to get out of samsara. It means that I'm trying to get out of this world. I thought there is somewhere else where it's free from all these problems, and then there is some kind of liberation waiting there. When your mind is free from all the delusions, all the karma, you can be in this very place, this very world, and you can experience liberation, nirvana, not being negatively impacted by all of this. Not being negatively impacted where you suffer, experience suffering by all of that. So, yeah, it is interesting, even though we study and learn all of that, but sometimes, I want to get out of samsara as though from this world, the place, because there's too much problem here. As though there is some places where there's waiting, everything is just perfect and fine and waiting there. So I think that's where Narayana's, when your mind is free from the delusion and the karma, wherever you are, in whatever body you are, wherever you are, whoever you are, you achieve liberation. You have achieved liberation. So and so if that is the liberations, the cessation of karma and the delusion, so how does the karma and delusion arises. How does karma and delusion arise? That create the samsara, like the suffering. So he says, the karma and the delusions, arises because of, I like to call fabricating mind. So that arises from the, first, the attachment or the desire and the aversion or hatred. And such aversion or the desire arises because our mind project, oh, this is nice, this is good, this is useful, this is beneficial. Our mind projects that. And then on the basis of that, we project that object, oh, this will be useful, is a help, is a beneficial, or is something I need, or it will give me happiness, or it will make my life easier, it will make my life convenient. So whatever our mind project, all these colors, and then we have desire or wanting, the desire to have that objects, desire towards that object. On the other hand, then our mind project in different ways. Oh, this object is not nice, it's a bad, it's useless, or is meaningless. All different qualities. And on the basis of that, then aversion arises. Are we clear? Why we have aversions and why we have desire to settlement? Before that desire, after there is certain level of projecting that objects, interpreting that object, projecting in certain ways. It comes from that mind, the mind that projects objects in different, with the different qualities or different, and that projection of the objects arises because you believe or you perceive there is object from its own side. There's object from its own side. You believe, you perceive, you perceive and believe that, and then, oh, that object is nice, or that object is bad. And that perceive the object to exist from its own side or objectively is the root of everything, and that is the ignorance. Are we clear? If we understand, when you have understanding realization, there is no object from its own side or objectively, then there's no object to project, good or bad. It's like, in the dream, it comes as persons, and you believe that person is a real person. Then, we project, oh, this nice person, bad person, whatever. And then on the basis of that, you have attachment, whatever. But when you understand, oh, it's just a dream. There's no real person from there. It's just a dream. There's no real person from there. Then there's not real object to kind of project that person being good or bad. And on the basis of that, there's no need to get aversion or desire. So it's important to really understand that. And then when we read, when we hear, when you listen, then those teachings connects and become real, you know. Otherwise, sometimes the teaching says, but I don't know how does it work, you know. So it is, so that the way to understand is more better and more profoundly is then really when you have any of those emotions, really check it, observe it, and see whether it's that sequences or not, you know. Where does where does that anger comes? Is it rooted in that projection or projecting mind or not? Try to see it. And see where does that projection mind comes? Is it rooted in that ignorance of grasping, of believing, perceiving that there is a real object from its own side or not? So through such analysis, observations, and investigation, then trying to understand, and so then we understand from our own experience, and not just because those great philosophers and masters or because they say, not whether they said or not.